Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Malignant and Park Dining saw my chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. So I do have the round 6 game for you between Daniel Naroditsky and Wesley So, taken from our Aimchess U.S. Meltwater Champions Chess Tour Tournament. So for all my people in the Philippines, as always, I will say mabuhay to you. Kamusta na aking makaibigan? Hello ulit, Masaya kamakita kang muli. Mabuting pagbati, ingat lagi. It's gonna be lunchtime, so magandang pon, magandang ro, magandang gabi. And mag-lunch na tayo, because it is lunchtime for you guys, so enjoy your lunch. Alright, so like I said, I appreciate everybody stopping by. If you are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we got e4, e5, knight comes to f3. We see knight to c6, bishop to b5. We got a6, so this is the Roy López opening. It is the Morphy variation. As I always say, I mean, Morphy wasn't the first person to play this, but he's by far the most famous. So, I mean, they kind of attributed it to him. We see bishop down to a4. We got knight to f6. We see castles by white. b5, bishop to b3. Bishop comes to c5, and then we have d3. You know, we are developing this bishop outside of this chain before we push d6. So we're just trying to get the bishop a little bit more activated. You know, because the bishop didn't come to e7, you are still subject to capturing on e4. You know, having it come with, you know, some consequences. Let's say we did like a c3 or something like that here. Knight to e4, you'd be looking at queen to e2. Instead of rook to e1, you definitely don't want to move this rook because this bishop is gonna hit that pawn, make it kind of tender. So you're going to be getting your material back here. But after bishop to c5, we do see d3. We got d6. We got a4, trying to open the position up a little bit. Also, you know, create that little luff for the bishop. Rook comes to b8. Pawn takes b5. Pawn takes b5. We have bishop to e3. And this might look kind of weird because you're thinking, man, can't you just take on e3 and it's going to mess up your pawn chain or your pawn structure? It is, but I'll be explaining exactly how that's not that bad here. Bishop takes e3, pawn takes e3. And so this is the thing. In general, you don't necessarily want to have double bishops, but you have to look at all of the positives, you know, all the pluses that you're getting in this particular position. So one of the pluses that you're getting is you're getting this open f-file. And you see this bishop is already trained on f7. So that is a plus. The pawn here on e3 is protecting, it is preventing d4. So, you know, it's restricting the movements of the knight just a little bit. You know, you're just getting, so like I said, I mean, yes, in general, you don't just want to have just double pawns, especially isolated double pawns are really, really bad usually. But, you know, sometimes you can afford it because you're going to get a lot of pluses over minuses. And, you know, of course, I mean, the knight could come to g5 at some point. And, you know, you have a lot of pressure, you know, coming up to this pawn. So you're doing good. You have castles by black. Queen comes to e1, and this is the novelty of the game. I think actually queen to e2 has been seen before. There's been like about 4 or 5 different moves in this position, and queen coming to e2 was one of them. But like I said, queen to e1 has never been seen. So we see queen over to e7. Knight comes to h4. We see g6. Knight comes to c3. Knight comes to b4. You know, of course, we're not worried about that pawn because we got the bishop protecting. Queen comes to g3. So as you guys can see, I mean, white, you know, they're a little bit further ahead than black is. You know, this bishop doesn't really have a home yet. And this rook is not fully effective. It's on this, you know, like closed file. So, you know, black has a little bit to be desired. King comes to g7. We see knight to f5 with check. And of course, we can't allow this. So the bishop has to take on f5, and then we see rook takes f5. It was possible to take here with the pawn you know, correct your pawn chain or your pawn structure. But, I mean, rook taking f5 is the best move in the position. So knight comes back to d7. We see rook a to f1. So you guys can see, I mean, the pressure is immense on this file. So like I said, I mean, you know, earlier when you had the exchange of, you had the capture with the pawn, it might have initially looked bad, or if you just like don't like double pawns, it does look bad. But I mean, you have a lot of play with this rook, this bishop, this rook. This queen can swing over maybe somewhere at some point. So, I mean, you got a lot for, you know, damaging your structure. So that's how you kind of have to think about it. So we got f6. Knight comes to d5. We see knight takes d5, bishop takes d5. We see knight over to b6. We got h4, c6, and we actually have bishop takes c6. And so pretty much pushing c6 was just like, you just gave up the pawn. Now you do get queen to c7, but then you're able to take another pawn with bishop takes b5. So, you know, you've given away 2 pawns. You're gonna get one back, possibly get another one back. But like I said before, you have way too much pressure on this king's position. This pawn is moving pretty fast. This bishop actually honestly doesn't even matter. I mean, it's like so far off sides. You're just like, dude, it's whatever. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that over there chilling. So h5 comes. We see queen takes b2, and then white just says, "Hey man, I'm going all in." Like I said, they don't care about this bishop over here. You know, you have so much material over here on the king side attacking this king. You know, you're not even worried about it. It's not even helping your position anyway. So we have h6, and this is a very dangerous pawn. King comes back to h8. And we have reached a point in the game that if you do want to pause the video and see what move white plays, it looks like it looks like it can't be played. But yes, like I said, pause the video and see if you can guess what white plays in this position. Okay, cool. So like I said, it is the super impossible looking queen to g5. And this is just nice, man, because like check this out. You absolutely cannot take this because you're going to be looking at checkmate. Because this pawn is like I said, it's super dangerous. So you definitely can't do that. So the queen is literally, so it's a free square for the queen to land on, as crazy as it seems. Now, if we do back up just a touch, some of you guys might have been wondering, well, what happens if you take the pawn on h6? Like, is it that bad? Yes, it's that bad. If we took the pawn on h6 with the king, you'd be looking at rook takes f6. And, you know, it's just, you got a lot of nasties going on over here, man. So the best possible move is the king to come back to g7. But queen comes to f3. And like I said earlier, this file is like monstrous. You know, yes, you do have some damaged pawns in the middle, but you get so much plus for this f file being open. It's well worth it. And so, you know, you're looking at, you know, rook coming to f7 with check. And, I mean, this is just the end of the game right here. So backing up, like I said, we did see king to h8, and then we saw the really accurate queen to g5. Queen took b5, and this might be a spike capture, to be honest with you. Wesley So might have been like, hey, man, I'm just going to at least grab some material off the board. But, I mean, there's really nothing that black is able to do in this position. We see rook takes f6, rook f to e8. We see rook takes g6. So it's like, man. And you absolutely cannot take this pawn, this rook, because you're going to be looking at queen to f6, and it doesn't matter where you go. You are getting mated. So we're not going to do that. But after rook takes g6, there really isn't, like I said, there hasn't been anything to do for a few moves. But, I mean, the knight comes back to d7, and you see rook to g7. And it is actually in this position that Wesley So does resign the game. And you resign the game because of the variation that I'm going to show you. There is a best move in the position, and that move is rook to g8. And like I said, there hasn't been anything that black has been able to do for like quite a while, for at least a few moves. And I mean, this is like there's no exception with this one. Queen would come to e7. And you know you are threatening the immediate rook to h7 with checkmate. So you have to defend that. So knight comes to f6, rook takes on g8, rook takes on g8, and then you have queen taking f6, rook blocking on g7, and then queen comes to g7 is checkmate. This is the variation that the computer gives as best because this puts off checkmate for the longest. Like literally any other move, you're going to get mated way faster. So this is like the best chance that white has to black has to like hold on for as long as possible. So that's a really unfortunate. But like I said, rook came to g7 and Wesley So, you know, he said he had enough. Like I said, there's so many different options that black has to try to do something in this position. But if you literally do nothing, queen's going to come to f6 or queen's going to come to f5. And, I mean, you're just not doing anything about this checkmate that much. I mean, And so, like I said, I mean, you go back to the beginning of the game when we saw this file, you know, this pawn capture here. It initially looked like it might be ugly, but I mean, you know, Daniel Naroditsky, he was showing like, you know, that sometimes there's exceptions to the rules because there are. The rules are a guide, you know, for you to play a certain way, but it's not always the case that, you know, you follow the rule 100%. There's always going to be an exception to the rules. So, yes, that was a very nicely played game by Daniel. That is that. Wesley So, I'm not sure. Let me see here. I think he's doing pretty good. He is in 5th place right now. So, yeah, I mean, he's in the pack. He's in the pack, but, you know, he's been doing really good recently. So, we will see how tomorrow goes. So, I appreciate everybody very much. Maraming salamat, aking makaibigan, and I will see you guys next time.